What's up, guys? Welcome back to a special early edition of Newswave, mostly because that Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase is an hour after Newswave would go live, so I figured, hey, why not just go ahead and put a bit of a buffer there between that show and this one. Also, like an hour or so after, 9 a.m. Eastern, I'll probably be live with a reaction to that Direct, so keep an eye out for all of that. Today, though, we do have some stuff to go over, which includes now people's concerns around what Nintendo is going to do, what the rest of their year looks like, since it's a partner showcase and not a general Direct. What happens with those first-party games? We'll go over that. We're also going to be talking about that Sony multi-platform job listing, because things keep getting stranger and stranger with now Sony kind of responding to people over it. And then we also have Microsoft with their recent fiscal year report for their finances. That coming way, of course, Microsoft with Xbox, and giving us idea even how much money or revenue that Game Pass is generating. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with a new controller, although one we've already heard about and was supposed to have been paired with that Analogue 3D. As you can see this over on 8BitDo's website, it is the 8BitDo 64 Bluetooth controller. It's available to order now on Amazon. It appears to be shipping starting August 8th, although it has like a range of 2 or 3 days. So August 8th to the 11th, for example, is when they're expecting it to be delivered. I went ahead and ordered one. It's $40. I'm expecting to get an Analogue 3D at some point, so all right, there, we'll pair this controller with it. I mean, it is just designed, as you can sort of see here, for Nintendo 64 games, go figure. However, while it works with the Analogue 3D, it also functions with the Switch 1, the Switch 2, Windows, and Android. Now, they do mention it has Hall effect joysticks, and as you can see, sort of with the layout there, trying to mimic a more modernized version of the Nintendo 64 controller that's utilizing Bluetooth 5.0. So I'm interested in the feel and stuff. It's 8BitDo. They typically make some pretty good controllers. It's more so the console side that's been kind of a problem across the board, since we haven't really seen the Analogue 3D in action just yet. But hey, at least we can get the controller in August, when we should see, I guess, reviews start to go live with press getting their hands on Analogue 3D finally. Also, we did find out the runtime of Gamescom opening night live, that happening here in a few weeks, which we can see this from Jeff Keighley, where he says, just 3 weeks until Gamescom. See you in Cologne on Tuesday, August 19th, for 2 hours of news, updates, and announcements, streaming live everywhere, which, okay, so I know he's thinking in his mind 2 hours is a good middle ground, because if it goes 3 hours, that's just way too long. An hour, you're probably not able to fit everything in you want when it comes to just trying to sell spots for ads or just placements for some of these trailers for games. 2 hours, though, at a Gamescom, it feels like it really feels that way. So that's more, right? So that's the only thing. This feels like it's going to be one of those shows where you hit the middle and it's just flat. It doesn't feel like a lot's happening. Nothing super exciting over the top happening. And that's kind of what I feel like here. There's gonna be a lot of downtime for the most part. Now, we'll see what he has to reveal in a couple of weeks, but the fact that this is sort of sandwiched between, as we're seeing now, a Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase and then Tokyo Game Show in September, it'll be a stretch, I think, we'll say, to fill those 2 hours. Oh, and it looks like with Battlefield 6 having its official reveal trailer released today, we have some information around the closed beta and open beta dates. This coming a little early. We can see this over on Insider Gaming, and they say it's coming from sources who wish to remain anonymous, as they were not authorized to discuss the beta plans. However, we're looking at August 7th to the 8th for the closed beta, which will then apparently run directly into the open beta phase, August 9th to the 10th. So kind of just like 4 days really for the entire beta, but the first half is just closed, the second half then being the open, and that'll give them a chance maybe to just get things sorted when it comes to their servers and network, and then really open it up to what I would assume just be a lot of traffic then for the open beta. EA also, strangely enough, put out the release trailer, this trailer, a bit early, and it seemed to come back with an October 10th release date. So that's also the expectation there, but I guess we'll find out later on today with the big reveal trailer for the gameplay and multiplayer. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with that Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase. Going into the week, there were a lot of us expecting it to be a general Direct, mostly because there's still games that Nintendo say coming out in 2025 that don't have release dates. And one big one that got announced back in 2017, and we're still waiting to hear about when it's coming out for even the new generation, the generation after the one that we thought it was originally going to be coming out on specifically. Well, with this, we can see the announcement from Nintendo. This is posted on their official account saying, join us for a Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase tomorrow, July 31st at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Tune in for roughly 25 minutes of information on upcoming Switch 2 and Switch 1 games from our publishing partners. I did a video just sort of going over my read on the language they used here, saying things like publishing partners, but not developing partners, which I think is an important thing to take away from it, because it sounds like you won't see Age of Imprisonment, the Zelda game. While that is Nintendo's the Nintendo series with Legend of Zelda and even like the Warrior style that they've been running with, it's made by Koei Tecmo, but without developer partners in there, Nintendo publishes it, so they wouldn't be a publishing partner then. So that's why a lot of people are like, "Ooh, okay, that kind of diminishes the chances of something like that being there," and I feel like that is correct. So that then brings us back around, and again, I had that video up just kind of kill time before the partner showcase. I ran over a ton of games that could be there. It was kind of just honestly a lot of guessing, because third-party games don't necessarily need to be at this partner direct, since there are other things, as we mentioned, Gamescom and Tokyo Game Show that are coming up in the next 2 months. And that, I think, is something that makes this pretty difficult to really predict well. So with that in mind, Nintendo doing their partner showcase now does indeed open them up to having, say, a general direct in September ahead of Tokyo Game Show, and it would make sense. Sony typically has a state of play ahead of Tokyo Game Show, and Nintendo does something in September usually, and that does coincide with, go figure, big event in Japan for that market where, Nintendo is massive, right? They're the leader there when it comes to gaming. So yes, they want to have something that is big, being a general direct even, ready to go ahead of that show, where even some of their partners can have their stuff shown there alongside of first-party Nintendo games. So in a way, this partner showcase, this partner direct, is kind of that way of them saying, hey, we don't have anything specifically planned for an event like this, but we can have third parties come together and showcase their stuff for our brand new system. And yes, they may be games that are already out, but there are people, again, who will be curious with some just to see how they run on the Switch 2. Now, the concern has been, well, hold on, what about Metroid Prime 4, Zelda Age of Imprisonment, or Kirby Air Riders? Those are the three. We have Drag X Drive released it. Everyone calm down, right? We're good on that. But for those other three, what are we doing with that? Because it's about to be August, and those are coming out apparently in 2025. Pokemon Legends ZA, that's been dated. That's coming out in October. You feel like they're going to want to space some stuff out around that, since they have an entire bundle for the system set up for it. So in that case, you have September. Maybe you try to fit something in there in October. Otherwise, then you go September, October, November. Do you try to do first week of December? That's where it becomes strange, because we're about to be into August. Are you going to try to announce something and then release it in 3 weeks? Again, big game, Drag X Drive. I think the key factor here, though, is their Nintendo Today application, and that's what I think they'll leverage. I feel like they're going to make an announcement there for maybe even a game-specific direct, like they've done with Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Maybe they have something for Kirby Air Riders, or Zelda Age of Imprisonment, or maybe even Metroid Prime 4. Hey, tune in here. You'll see a bunch of stuff about the game, and then we'll also share the release date, any amiibos they want to try to sell you, that kind of stuff. So that's sort of my expectation now. There's also this interesting thing floating around about Mario and its 40th anniversary as well. So I'll admit, it's weird that this is a partner showcase direct, because all signs were pointing to it to being a big general direct as they work to put dates on first-party games, set up the Mario 40th anniversary, and then work with third parties. But this is the route they're going, and that would tell me drop something in Nintendo Today app to get that moving for one of these three titles, and then roll into September with a big general direct and just start announcing all kinds of stuff. So we'll see how that plays out, though, over the next few months. For now, though, We'll see what they have later on today, this morning, with this Nintendo Direct. Next up, let's talk about this PlayStation job listing that it's caused a lot of back and forth online, we'll say, with the multi-platform strategy from Sony for PlayStation becoming more and more broad at this point. And especially when you start to hear other platforms with Xbox and Nintendo being involved from a PlayStation job listing, yeah, alarm bells were going off online for people who were concerned about exclusivity and stuff for the console markets really fading away. I think there is kind of a traditional viewpoint of that, just especially if you're older. That's kind of how we kind of grew up with these consoles. It's like, okay, these games are specific to these systems, but it's not necessarily looking that way anymore, unless you're Nintendo. And again, they'd rather go out of business than put Mario on PlayStation, something like that. Well, it appears some PlayStation fans are emailing Sony about it, which, all right, we can see this, though. This was pointed out by PlayStation Lifestyle over on Reddit, where a person posted saying, "I sent PlayStation an email requesting an update on this discourse. Today, I received their response, which suggests they are not changing strategy to align with user suggestions from the other platform." So this is the email. I don't know what they sent them exactly, like with their email, how it was worded when they were typing it out to Sony. But this sounds like a very generic response that may have just been, they might have used AI generation. I don't know. It says, "While we continue to explore new ways to grow and evolve the gaming ecosystem, we are committed to preserving the unique identity that PlayStation represents. As we have in the past, we will always listen to feedback from our community, including valued players like you, and ensure that our decisions are aligned with the experiences you expect from PlayStation." And it just says, "For latest updates, you can check the official blog. Thank you again for sharing your feedback." All that. Right, sure. Okay. So, again, this is basically sounds like they didn't even read the email and they just had an auto-generated reply sent right back to them. Sony, these companies, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, they do observe feedback from fans, from people who own their systems, who are in the ecosystem. Obviously, they're not going to completely destroy the ecosystem just because they want to put games here, but not necessarily take into account what people are saying. However, right now, Sony is the most profitable, apparently, that they've ever been, okay, for PlayStation. So what they're doing now is and when they show you the breakdown of how all of it's working out, it's not really because of exclusive games. A lot of it comes down to third-party games selling very well on their platform, and they get that 30% cut. They showed us that more than half of all sales in their PlayStation Store are from live service games. It's not like Sony's been great at those, but you see it be things like Fortnite, Apex Legends, Call of Duty, Warzone, Roblox, and others. You're like, wow, that live service money really is that valuable. Yes, that's why Sony keeps trying. So in their mind, how big of a deal is it that if some of these games go to other consoles, if it means we can then bring those people over to PlayStation to maybe play things like Roblox and Call of Duty and Fortnite? I mean, it really does come down to that right now, just based on the revenue breakdown that they've shared in their financials. So I don't necessarily think they're going to read through the emails and go, well, this person has a great point. We got to keep God of War or Days Gone on the PlayStation, or this whole thing could just fall apart. I mean, you have a hard time convincing Hideaki Nishino that he shouldn't try to go make more money elsewhere with a game that they sold 7 or 8 years ago for the identity of a console. That's just kind of the way these executives and the corporate structure works. They see more money, and they don't necessarily think it's going to hurt them in the long term to do it. Yeah, they'll go ahead and get that short-term money like tomorrow if they can. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft and their recent fiscal year report. That's mostly just going to be about Xbox. I don't know how many people out there who are watching this are like, man, how is cloud computing doing? How is Azure doing? No, you're probably wondering, how is Xbox doing? What's going on with Game Pass? Well, The Verge did have a breakdown here after a lot of the report came out from Microsoft, and we can see this, for example, that's shared over on their website. And I went ahead and broke it down on some of the bullet points. So content and services is up 13% year over year. They naturally are comparing this year versus last year in 2024. Revenue was revenue is up 10% year on year. Hardware, though, continues to decline. So this would be the quarter versus last year, 22%. Now, Microsoft's fiscal year ends at the end of June, so June 30th. All right, so they're off a little bit from what we're typically used to, which would be at the end of March for many of these different gaming companies. Now, after all of that, because they don't really share a lot of detailed information for exact revenue figures or profits, Satya Nadella was on a conference call. Yes, talking about a lot of things like cloud, AI, etc., right? But he did touch on some of the gaming stuff. 500 million monthly active users across platforms and devices. That is a skewed number. I think we all recognize this because they can count Windows users, since you might have the Xbox application already installed on there, people with their phones that maybe have the Xbox app. There are a lot of ways that they can pump those numbers up, if you will. Now, did go on to say that they are now the top publisher on both Xbox and PlayStation this quarter. And yeah, we've kind of seen some of the numbers and the charts that have been getting released in, for example, Circana, where it just shows like 5 or 6 Xbox published games, Microsoft published games that are on like the best-selling list for PlayStation. So it all adds up there. Game Pass, though, is interesting. Annual revenue was nearly $5 billion for the first time. So essentially telling us that right now Game Pass is making more money than it ever has. Although some people looked at that $5 billion number for 12 months then, and they're trying to do the math. They're thinking, oh, it's like 20 some odd million people. Well, if you consider the fact that you could have people who are at $10 tier, $12 tier, 15, 20, it is hard to get an exact breakdown. Some were going, oh, it's a range between 23 million and 44 million. It's like, yeah, that's where we are. That's how big of a gulf there is, just trying to figure out the exact number. I think the exact number probably is low 30 million. So there hasn't been substantial growth there in terms of number of people, but I mean, they have raised prices over the last couple of years as they've gone along. And yeah, that will in turn raise revenue for people who are willing to stick around. I'm still wondering if they decide to raise revenue or raise cost again for Game Pass. I would expect them to. So that most likely would then push them up above that 5 billion mark comfortably, provided people stick around, which then comes back to them releasing more and more games. So right now, it's about as expected. Their consoles are dropping, which it's $600 for an Xbox Series X that takes a disc, right? So it's not exactly approachable. Everything's gotten more expensive from the hardware side, but their software side, because they are publishing on other platforms, is working. So I would expect more of that. However, I am interested to see what their next generation strategy is when it comes to pricing, since $600 consoles aren't exactly selling for them. Do they have a plan to maybe get that cheaper and, that sounds weird, but tap into AI in the cloud? I have to exactly see how that would work in the wild, away from a controlled environment like within Microsoft where they're doing the testing. But maybe they just do what they normally do, release another console that's pretty straightforward, and maybe they get it to come in at like that $500-ish mark all over again, and maybe move on that handheld. So that's kind of where we are with Microsoft. Software up. Seems like revenue around subscription services up with Game Pass at $5 billion, but hardware continues to decline. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, as reviews are live. The game is out now, and I was fortunate enough to get to play it early, as .emu did send over a review code where I was playing it on the PlayStation 5, so I'll give some of my quick thoughts as I'm a few hours into it, although the game isn't exactly super long, which we'll get to here in a minute. But first, we can see the reviews. It's coming in at an 85. That's pretty good. I mean, look, it's a 2D homage to the original Ninja Gaiden games. And when I say original, I don't mean the Xbox, I mean the original Nintendo game. So it's supposed to be a difficult 2D platforming style game. Although I will say this, in my time with it, which is just about, I think I played 3 hours or so, it's not super difficult, all right? Like, the bosses are challenging, but it's not like, okay, I'm never beating this. Now, you can pump up the difficulty through a few different ways. Like, you'll unlock these talismans. Some of them are negative effects, but they will raise your rank and score. That's kind of the way this works, though, is they kind of expect you to go through the game sort of multiple times and raise your score and be able to compete that way, because the game itself is maybe 5 or 6 hours long. Now, you can do some other stuff, as they have secret areas and missions and things to find, which is fun. And while I think the progression could have been better because they give you challenges as you go through each level, there really isn't a huge reward that I've seen for doing the challenges. Even when I complete all 3 of them, it's just like, Hey, good job. Oh, okay. I mean, if you give me a special ability or something, I guess. Now, I have been able to get my rank up high enough to where it does give me something in the little item shop they have, which is cool, but I've only been able to really equip 2 things at once, and I have a ton of different items that just kind of go unused. So it would have been cool to see maybe a bunch of slots being used, and then by the end of it, you're just really powerful, but maybe they were concerned that if you became too powerful, the game just wouldn't be as interesting because it's Ninja Gaiden. It's supposed to be at least somewhat difficult. Otherwise, the controls are concise. The platforming is good. It has that sort of that messenger thing, if you remember playing that game, where you can jump off of the enemies, and that becomes a core mechanic to sort of platform around. And it's been a lot of fun. I love the visual style too. It's that callback to the old like 16-bit sort of era, but with some really smooth and good looking animations. So I highly recommend it. I think it's like $25. And I know it's okay, 5 to 6 hour runtime. I get it. People go, that might be a little much, but I think the quality is there. I think the fun factor is there. And worst case scenario, yeah, let it go on sale. It gets down to like $15 or so. I mean, that to me, that's a fun weekend game at that price point. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, which of these third-party games are you most interested in seeing for the Partner Direct? Okay, Capcom is just number 1. I mean, they roll in with some Resident Evil games or Mega Man. Okay, then they win. I get it, okay. Square Enix, though, at 36%. They have a chance to break the internet, maybe with Final Fantasy IX Remake. Bandai Namco, 18%. I'm sure they could show up with Dragon Ball Sparking Zero or a few other things. And then Ubisoft, well, they can show up with a game. Yeah, look, I know. It's difficult for people to care about Ubisoft. I get it. But they can still show up with, like, Assassin's Creed 4 Remake. That might get some headlines. That would be a lot of fun to see that. But look, I get it. Capcom, Square Enix. I think for a lot of people right now, those are the 2 leading candidates, hoping to see something really cool on the Switch too, even from their back catalog. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Dragon, who says, comparing the Steam Deck to this new Xbox Ally X is like comparing a PS4 to a PS5 Pro. It's 2 very different performance levels, and the price reflects that. Want to play old AAA games portably? Get a Steam Deck. If you want to play new AAA games portably, get an Xbox Ally X. It's really that simple. So I do think I get what you're saying when it comes to the enthusiast is going to go, well, yeah, I'll get the Ally X. But the Steam Deck at this point is such a good value. At that, just because the price point could stay the same as when it first released, it was like $400, and it feels cheap then compared to the field of PC gaming handhelds. And then there's also cheaper options than that on the refurbished side. The OLED model, I think with that screen, it is completely worth it, especially once again if you find it on the refurb site from Valve, which is like high quality stuff there with a whole warranty. I think it comes back to the usability of the Steam Deck, the community around it, and the updates from Valve themselves. It's just a much more approachable device all the way around, especially for someone who is thinking about getting into PC gaming handhelds for the first time. The Steam Deck is always going to be the easy recommendation. But I get what you're saying about the Xbox Ally X being the enthusiast system. I don't know how large that market is from like a mass appeal side. I just think when you tell someone, hey, the Steam Deck is $300 or less, if you just want to start out with it, they're going to go, okay, I'll get that for a first one rather than the one that's like borderline $1,000. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here on a card. Or maybe you want to see what some of the predictions and games I was throwing around for that third-party Nintendo Direct later on this morning. I'll leave that right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.